Hello Internet, in this video I want to take a look at adding coyote jumping, I think that's the name for it, into our platformer. So I don't know the etymology of coyote jumping, it's just a phrase that I've seen, and what it describes is in a platformer, being able to jump after you have run off of a platform. So typically this is used as like an accessibility type feature, where for a few frames after you've run off of your platform, you're still able to jump. And so that's sort of intended to be a way for you to get a little bit nicer on your jumps, especially when they need to be very precise. It prevents having like one frame windows for nailing your jump. So I've already kind of been exploring a little bit with this character controller I have. It doesn't do horizontal collisions at all right now. But what it does do is you can see on the left there, it's probably very small, but there's actually 3 little cyan lines and then some red ones. Those represent our ground test, and then also the red lines represent if we're hitting the ground or not. And so our player is actually able to jump, and there's some extra stuff that I'm doing here to make that jump work. So one of the interesting things is if I actually hit the jump button before I land on the ground, it will actually cache that jump. And then after, I believe I have it set to 0.2 seconds, you will no longer jump. But if you hit the ground within 0.2 seconds of hitting the jump button, it's going to jump immediately the same frame that it lands on the ground. And so effectively what we want to do is the same thing, but we want to handle grounding in that way. And effectively treat it like you're on the ground for a duration of time after you leave the ground. So I don't know the best way to do this because there are some interesting side effects of doing this. One is, well, I just ran off, but one is if we jump, theoretically, if we're saying you're still on the ground during that jump, you might be able to get a second jump off. I don't know how that's going to work. We may be able to tweak that a little bit, and it's not really something that I'm super worried about right now. I'm more worried about the idea of jumping off and then doing that. You also saw I have a lock, I guess, that kind of jumps you back up onto a platform. That happened right there. And so even if you would fall slightly below a platform, it actually pushes you back up onto it, assuming you are in these cyan lines. So it kind of helps you run along these platforms more nicely, and then you just fall if you don't make it. So here, that's not the right thing. Here is the code for this. Keep in mind, this is prototyping ideas for me. So everything's in the update. That's probably not the best way to do it. But everything for the entire character controller is being just thrown into the single update. And the idea there is we can kind of get ideas out and just quickly iterate over things without having to worry about design and things like that. This is more trying to figure out how to make a character controller that feels good rather than try to design a platforming character controller. Especially try not to design a platforming character controller that's like universal, because that's just a much bigger problem. So in this case, there's a lot of things going on. The Y limit is what's used to actually lock the player to a ground. And there's some movement along the x-axis. Effectively, what ends up happening is our player has a velocity that handles gravity, but also moving side to side. They also have a jump timer. And so that jump timer is decreased every frame by the amount of time. And so the idea is when you would press the jump button, which for me is just hard-coded to space, if you would press that, it sets it to 0.02. And then every single frame, it decreases that timer by the delta time. And so effectively you get a fifth of a second effectively to jump after landing. And so what the character controller is doing is treating that jump timer as anything greater than 0 is an input to jump. And that is happening right here. So if we're grounded and the jump timer is greater than 0, then we want to jump. What we can do is make this private. Actually, no. We can keep this public, but we're going to make it a getter. So for now, we're just going to leave it as a public getter. It only has a get now, which means all of these things we're doing to set this aren't going to work. But what we can do is change this a little bit. And so actually, we can do a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to set this to private float grounded timer. And we're going to set that equal to 0.2 F, I guess. We'll do the same thing. I'll set it to 0 for now. And then when it should be set to something else, it'll be set to 0.2. Gives us about the same time. We'll probably set it to a much bigger value for testing purposes, just so like I can run off and wait and then make sure I'm off the platform before I do this. Ideally, it would feel like you're still on the platform, so it's not a very big window we're talking about, just a few frames. But it's enough so that you don't get frustrated by like running off of the edge. So what I'm thinking we're going to do is do a setter here. I know I had mentioned we weren't going to do a setter, but I think that's probably a good idea. And so let's do a get here and a set there. All right. And this is the part where me not writing properties in C# for a while is going to come into very clear pictures. This isn't right at all. What am I doing wrong? We'll figure it out. So get, we're going to return the grounded timer greater than 0. So you're grounded if your grounded timer is greater than 0. And you are not grounded, or rather you're not grounded if the grounded timer has fallen below 0. And so we can just subtract from this grounded timer for every time you are in the air and set it to some specific value when you are on the ground. And so if we set this equal to true, what we want to do is set the grounded timer equal to some hard value. So I'm going to set it to 10, which means 10 seconds, which is way too long, but it's fine for this. And so we will treat it as if you're on the ground for 10 seconds after you leave the ground. Again, this is far too long, but it will help us for testing. And so in the same place we're doing our jump timer decrement, I'm just going to do our grounded time and spell it right. There we go. Grounded timer minus equals the time, delta time. And so we're subtracting this grounded time, and that should be pretty much everything we need. Everything else up here is actually doing these checks for whether we're grounded or not already. This isn't going to work. We need value if it's true, otherwise set it to 0. Just because otherwise, if you try to set it to false, it would actually set it to 10, and we don't want that. Instead, we're going to have a ternary operator based on the value that you pass into this property. That makes more sense. So here is where a lot of the grounding checks are being done. This is effectively casting 3 rays straight down. And if it hits something, it returns grounded, returns true if it hits something. And so this grounded is just an OR effectively of these 3 ray casts and saying it's true if we hit this. We don't want to do this. There. If value is equal to that, otherwise equal to the grounded timer. That's better. So it will only set the value if we're doing that. Otherwise, I was setting it to 0. That wouldn't work. And it wouldn't work because we'd be setting it to 0, which means we would set grounded equal to false, set the grounded timer equal to 0. So it would effectively automatically reset. Effectively rendering this countdown thing completely useless because we'd be ignoring it entirely. This should work though. I know it might be a little bit confusing, but I have a lot of things going on here. So the grounded timer is going to subtract from the time delta, and that is what we're using to detect our grounding. And so if we say we're grounded, we set it to 10 seconds, and then for every frame we're not on it, we subtract the amount of time that frame took from the grounded time. And so you will be able to not jump after 10 seconds of being on the ground. So I should be able to just walk off, and we are flying. Gravity is based on your grounded time. We should fall eventually, if this works. I shouldn't have set this to 10 seconds. We're going to be here for a while. This might have been a mistake. I don't have the patience for this. Let's set this to 0.5. There. That's probably better. And so we should just be able to walk off. And then after 0.5, we should just fall. If I did this right. And it doesn't look like I did because we're not falling. And so what we're going to do is make this public because I have no idea what it is. And we kind of want to know. So we're going to set that to public. And then we're going to look at our grounded timer up here and run our game and see what it's set to. A negative value. And it's still negative, or it's still positive. Why is it getting reset? So I had a hitbox for the player, but that should be disabled, so it shouldn't be hitting anything. And we have raycasts here that should be saying, yes, you hit something, or no, you didn't. And those aren't showing any hits. So I think something is wrong, and we are incorrectly detecting when to set this to whatever value we're doing. So the value here is going to be the value we pass in to this grounded. So it's a property of Boolean value. And so if we pass in true, the value here is true. And so we should set this equal to 0.5. If we pass in false, it should be reset back to the grounded timer, which seems correct. And then here we're subtracting from our grounded timer. Where do we do this? And why would it be incorrect? I've been having issues with my debugger, but let's see if we can't create a launch JSON. Let's see if we can attach a debugger. I don't think this is working, but we're gonna, there we go, Unity debugger. Ha, it works. All right. Let's attach a breakpoint here. Actually, we can attach it here. And that should let us see how this is being executed, because I don't think it's doing what I want it to do. So we're going to attach to the Unity editor by allowing that. Did it actually work? I don't think it did. Yeah, okay. We'll pretend like that's working. We'll know pretty quickly because we should hit the ground here and then be... Oh, we're going to do this every frame. Let's set a conditional breakpoint. So we're going to say if value equals true. That's probably a much better idea. So you can see here the value is false. And so grounded timer should just go down. We should be able to continue this though. Okay. Oh, there. Did that work? Yes. All right. So we're no longer hitting every single frame. So I just set a conditional breakpoint. So when this becomes true, we would hit it. Because everything is based off of delta times and we just had a massive delta time, we just jumped right through this platform. But we should fly off into the sky. That's not right either. There's a few things that I'm confused about. Oh, okay, I know why that happened. This was supposed to be easy. I thought we were done. We're not done because I screwed it up for a few different other reasons. Why isn't that conditional firing? That's weird. Grounded timer greater than or equal to 0? Greater than 0. So that should fire when we actually hit something. This is weird though, because we weren't reading the value, so I'm not sure why that was happening. But this one should work. Or not. We didn't hit our breakpoint again. I think I'm using these wrong because that should have worked. Value equals true, right? Cool. Save that and restart our debugger. Is that what needed to happen? All right, maybe. Yes, cool. Okay, so you need to restart your debugger when you set a breakpoint. Cool. Didn't know that. Now I do. That's weird. All right. So our grounded timer is equal to negative 0.9. And value is that. Let's just continue here. We should just keep hitting the ground. So I can remove this. One thing to call out, we have this call stack here. And so we can actually see that we are hitting line 36 here. This grounded call is what is causing this to be set to true. And that's going to be important because what we're going to do is disable the breakpoint, start this, move over here, and then re-enable it. And so we hit this, and line 34 is saying we are setting it to true. Why are we saying we're grounded here? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Detect ground should be false. Okay. Weird. I don't actually know why this is happening. So this might actually be a little bit weirder. I don't know why this is failing either, but we're gonna pretend like that's not the problem. I think this function is broken. So we may be doing something entirely different than figuring out about this whole coyote jumping thing, because I think we're done-ish. It's not quite done. But this isn't right. So hit 2D and the hit distance is greater than 0. So hit 2D will be true if this object has hit something. And then hit 2D.distance, we're just checking that it's greater than 0, so we're not like in an object. If we're in an object, this would be equal to 0, and we don't really want that. That's just wasn't great. And then we should return true there. Otherwise, we should return false. So we need to figure out why that is returning true. So we can continue this. What? Hold on. Do I need to restart it again? That didn't make a lot of sense. So there's no way we should have been able to hit this grounded timer thing without hitting that, because that's the only other place that this is set. The grounded timer is never set outside of those 3 detect grounds. And so for us to hit somewhere else, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm very confused. Unless I'm doing this very wrong, this should be fine. What? Okay. Sorry, I'm honestly super confused because this is false. And then these have to be okay. We screwed this up, and some of you are probably being like, have probably already figured out what's wrong. This is wrong. We are ORing here, and that doesn't work. And the reason that doesn't work is because of this. So because I'm doing an OR, grounded is already true. If we hit the ground, grounded is already true. And so we're doing grounded equals grounded or something else. But grounded is already true, which means that we're just saying grounded is equal to true, which means we're always hitting this. So even though this detect ground is returning false, it doesn't matter because we're ORing it with a true value. So we actually just want to set it equal to this. There we go. All right, we don't need the debugger anymore. That should fix it. I know that's confusing, but it's just because of the way that I was doing it previously to detect grounding. I was doing it in the same frame. Because we extended it across multiple frames, we're persisting the old state into the new state. and effectively just overriding anything that should have happened with the old state. And so once we got into that state, we were just locking it effectively with that OR. And so this should, if we restart this, allow us to fall. And then there's other problems with this too. There we go. So we run off the edge and then we fall after a set amount of time. So we want to do two things. And I'm not entirely sure what they are, but the two problems are, one, we can jump a lot, and two, we hang in the air. And I want you to still be affected by gravity after you run off the edge, but I want you to be able to jump. And so in this case, that's not quite happening. So we're going to change up this, and we're going to do bar is grounded equals false. And we're just going to do this and reintroduce those ORs because it seems like a good idea. And so we're going to do that. And then at the end of this, we're going to say grounded is equal to is grounded. And effectively set everything. So if we're not on the ground, we're going to set grounded equals to that. And so what this is going to do is give us an is grounded value that we can use later for, say, detecting if we're on the ground. So is grounded here, and the jump timer is greater than 0, velocity equals 7. So this is our jump. If we're grounded, if our velocity is blah, then do this. This is setting our velocity. And so here we want to do, we want our grounded for our jump, but we want is grounded for our gravity. And that's what this is doing. So is grounded will instantly become grounded when we land on something. And so this will stop our momentum. And then as long as we aren't grounded on that frame, we're going to apply downward gravity. And that's what this is doing. All right. And then here we're using our state, I guess. In the long term, the idea is to actually properly handle this state instead of just having this massive wall of code. Because if you can't already tell, this is already getting unwieldy. And it's only going to get worse because we don't even have horizontal movement in yet. Like the horizontal movement is these 3 lines and there's no collision or anything. And so if we start trying to like implement the entire game code in this thing, I'm going to get lost and it's not going to be fun for anybody. So we're going to figure that out later. But I want to continue to call that out because you shouldn't probably write your code like this. I'm doing this because I'm the only person working on the project and because I want to just get code out and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then we can figure out how to break it up later. So this should have fixed the problem with us floating after we walk off of a platform. And so if I start this, I should be able to walk to the left and immediately start falling like that. And even if I set this to some very large value, so like 10, we should still not hang in the air. And that will solve one of our problems. So I can still jump after I fall off, like I did there, but we start falling immediately. So gravity is immediately applied. The only other thing we have is this jump. So we have a jump timer that gets set here, and then we test our jump here. I don't know why there's a whole x-axis movement there, but what I'm going to do is cheat, I guess. Is this a good idea? We're gonna do it. So I'm gonna set the jump timer equal to 0, and that's gonna remove our jump. So we're not gonna have a jump input anymore after doing this jump. And then we're also going to set grounded equal to false, which is going to prevent us from being on the ground. And so hopefully that allows us to kind of avoid this. And then we will jump immediately the same frame. So the same frame you try to jump, you will actually already begin moving up. And so you shouldn't reset this grounded flag unless something weird is happening. And then we'll pretend like that's intended. But this is just like safety stuff to remove the extra jump input and remove the grounding flag. so you don't automatically just keep jumping or whatever. And so that should prevent you from being able to re-jump. And I can still jump. So that didn't work. Why not? Grounded and jump timer greater than 0. Jump timer equals 0. How are we doing this? Jump timer equals that. Okay, so yeah, because our jump timer is doing that, we're still able to jump. That could be a problem. It effectively gives us a double jump, which is why that's no good. And we are doing a grounded check though. And since we're setting that equal to false, it should have gone away because we should have set that equal to, oh, we didn't. Because by setting it, so doing a bunch of fancy bad ideas. By doing this, when we set this to false, we're effectively not, it's a no op. We're not doing anything if we try to set this to false. And because we're doing it that way, when I set it to false here, this does nothing. So we actually need to do grounded timer equals 0 and explicitly set that. Again, because this is all like still in the stages of figuring out how this code flow should work, a lot of this doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Like a lot of the names and things, and just the general way the code works probably isn't the clearest or best. But by getting it all out like this, it makes it a lot easier to kind of tell what needs to happen so that we can break it off and test it and do all that stuff that we actually want to do. So this hopefully fixes it because we actually swap that no op out for something that actually sets the grounding value to false. And so now I can no longer jump again. But if I run off the edge, I can still jump. And just to double check, my delayed jump test still works as well. And so everything seems to be fine. We can run off the edge and jump. And yeah, it seems fine. So that is, I guess, coyote jumping. Is it still set to 10? No. Set it to 10 just because that's a fun value. But to give you an idea of sort of how this is working, if you haven't picked up with the smaller thing, if I run off the edge, I can jump. And so we're giving that extra amount of time to allow you to have a left and a right bound for the optimal jump position in your game. So typically you'd want to jump like right at the edge of the platform. By adding this, even if you miss that optimal thing on the left side, so if you're running to the left and you miss that ideal jump point by a few frames, you will still get a jump and not just fall to your death. So it kind of gives you a nice even curve of, I guess, outcomes rather than just a slope of better outcomes and then just death. And so that's hopefully what this accomplishes. I hope that was interesting and you can use this. I wouldn't necessarily recommend copying the code that I have here, but I would recommend more taking some of the concepts that I'm introducing here and seeing how those can be applied into whatever you're building. That seems like a much better choice because I'm not super thrilled with how this code works. I'm not really sure if this is a good idea to use properties like this. This seems like a really bad idea. So that's probably going away, and there's probably a few other things that need to get changed. This code feels awful. But for a beginning point, for actually getting started and kind of exploring these things, it's a lot nicer to get code out than it is to sit back and try to design all of this and architect something really pretty when you don't really know what you're architecting in the first place. So that's sort of the path that I've been taking here. If you're not familiar with this project, which I don't know how you would be because I haven't shared it at all, but I'm making a platformer. I don't really know exactly how it's going to be, but one of the things that I'm trying to focus on is a lot of like movement-based things and make movement really fun. So probably going to see more of this in the future. So if you want to see that, consider subscribing. If you like this video and you want me to make more like it, hit the like button. I actually pay attention to that, and it lets me know what people like and want to see more of versus what people are less enthusiastic about. And so it kind of helps me shape what I focus on. Other than that, hopefully this is something you can use in your projects, and I will see you in the next time. So till then, see you, Internet.